What's going on, Sports Nation? I'm your host, Kenneth Tiberius Clark, and you guys are listening to another fun episode of the Sports Exclusive podcast. Now, if you guys remember, at the conclusion of season 1, I expressed my desire to really jump outside of my comfort zone, right? I wanted to explore the world of dance, expressive dance, because, them just like our favorite NBA athlete, our favorite NFL athlete, they're athletes just like everybody else, right? It's just completely different type of sport, different type of body movement. So I know a few episodes we had fun. We explored another dance. We talked about our strippers athletes. So I know you guys had fun with those episodes. But today I wanted to go to something a little bit more on the urban side, right? Sometime the sport started sometime in the early or mid 1970s, and it's kind of managed to not only grow over the United States, but it's managed to spread all over the world. So that said, I wanted to bring someone on that was well known within the community, in the b-boy community, so to speak. And he's an entrepreneur. He's a breakdance athlete. He's a musician, a DJ. So I want you guys to welcome Mr. Nico Spins Aguilar. Let's get him on the chat.
What's good, Kenneth? Thank you so much for the introduction. All audio on my side sounding fine? We all good?
Yeah, audio's good. Your video's off.
Awesome. Oh no, video off. Let me turn that on. Cool. Testing. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you. It's all good to go. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Sweet. Dude, all is good. I'm super grateful to have the brief relationship we've built over, I think, the last year and a half now. You've been coming over to the cafe, cigar lounge, coffee shop. But I can shamelessly plug that in later. But yeah, it's been super dope getting to know you.
Most definitely. And I was just gonna say it's just so interesting, I mentioned you guys, he's an entrepreneur. So I only knew Nico the entrepreneur. And then, to find out how much of an athlete, how much of an elite athlete he really is at what he does in B-Boy, it was just an amazing thing. So I had to get him on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll do my best to represent the culture, represent breaking and hip hop to the fullest I can. So whatever questions that you have, I've been in the game for about 16 years. I started when I was a kid, started at age 12. So I've been able to see different sequences of time, different trends come here and there within the scene. And I've been able to develop my voice in this platform that's thankfully helped carve my identity, or I've found my identity through. So whatever you need to know, I'll tell you everything that I humanly can.
Well, first thing first, talk to me about your upbringing. I think that's the biggest question mark for me, because I don't know. I'll be honest. You're probably the first guy I've met that close to my age that competes in b-boy. So I want to know what your upbringing is and how you got to this point.
Yeah, I started breaking at around 12 years old, but I've had sprinkles and sprinkles of hip hop culture jumping into my life, probably from age 9, and probably earlier before that. And now that I put different moments and random flashbacks together, but I grew up as a first generation Filipino American here in San Diego. I've bounced throughout the city. I've lived in North County, San Diego, from San Marcos and Escondido, all the way down to East Village here in downtown, and spent some time in Bankers Hill, spent some time in La Jolla, spent some time in Mira Mesa. So I've bounced all over the city, and I've even had some pivotal times in my life where I lived in Long Beach, and I was breaking, and I was going to university over there. And then I lived in Phoenix, Arizona, Tempe, Arizona for a little bit as well. But now back here in San Diego.
So you've just been all over the West Coast.
Yeah, all over the West Coast. But my primary exposures to hip hop, it really started with family members just being in the scene, candidly. Not they were intentionally trying to craft me into a competitive breaker, because a lot of these competitions that are so formal today didn't exist at all. It was more like there's jams, there's hip hop parties, there's hip hop events, and all the elements, whether that's DJing, breaking, MCing, graffiti, and the passing of knowledge, those 5 elements of hip hop, those exist. The scene is really healthy here in San Diego, so it really just kept popping in. I had a cousin that had turntables. Oh, go on.
Oh no, I was just gonna ask. In all the places that you've been, you feel like San Diego has been the best? Like, I know you said you were in Long Beach as well.
I think all of them had unique and very abundant experiences in terms of my relationship to hip hop. Long Beach breaking and LA breaking is entirely different than San Diego. It has just as much rich history for both of them. And they've both had their own unique struggles in terms of the history of hip hop and breaking, and being able to witness and be a part of it and experience it. That's been super dope.
So here's the big question. At what point, obviously you said you got influence from relatives that got into it. At what point, at what age do you think you were where you said, okay, I want to do this?
I was 12 years old. It was in the middle of 7th grade. The moment that I said I wanted to do this was that same year in 2008 when I was 12. My grandfather and my mother both passed away for various reasons. And then my family dynamic, our whole tree kind of went through this crazy period of more relatives passing away for various reasons. It was just a huge cluster of a lot of people passing, a lot of transition. And at that age, I was the youngest of all my siblings. Closest age gap is about 6 years. And with all that transition from grief to figuring out how we're going to start over, start fresh, have peace of mind. So my dad, head of household, can kind of keep the ship running. My sister, one of my 3 sisters who just finished high school, needed to move on, and how was she going to do college? Huge transitioning part of her life. Breaking kept kind of sprinkling itself as I was at my new school. And I think the lack of control that I had in my life, I really needed something. I needed some sense of control, and moving to a different school where I think I felt like I needed to prove something. I pretty much needed a lot of attention. I needed a lot of affirmation, consistently felt like I needed to be at my best or somehow contribute to something so I can have some visibility. I remember I was in...
I said purpose? It gave you a sense of purpose. Yeah. I
remember I was in one of my multimedia classes at a new school. Another kid was talking about how he wanted to make music to breakdance to. And I remember overhearing him, and we quickly became friends because I told him, I know how to breakdance. I don't really know how to breakdance, but I told him I knew how to breakdance. I could get down. I could do some crazy impressive moves that I've seen in Jackie Chan movies, or me and my cousins have rolled around at family parties trying to, flip around and stuff. And I met that friend after school, new friend after school, and I attempted to breakdance, and I got those sense of props. I got that validation I was looking for, the attention I was seeking. And it wasn't until that kind of became a consistent thing. I was the new kid at that new school, and I consistently felt like I had to prove myself until one teacher, and I still need to find her to this day, recommended, I think you should start a club. And I was like, okay, sure. She was like, what kind of floor do you guys breakdance on? I was just kind of searching through YouTube comments, early YouTube at the time, on what kind of floor do breakdancers do this on? You can honestly just do it on concrete. You could do it on gym floor, but I saw one YouTube comment on someone's home practice video, say that they're breaking on linoleum. I told this after school activities teacher that they break on linoleum. And then I came back after that following weekend, that activities teacher provided a huge sheet of linoleum. She said, start a club. And I didn't know that was going to change my life. A couple kids started joining the club, and I quickly saw that those kids started getting the props that I wanted. They started getting the validation that I was looking for, and I was like, whoa.
So you found your community, your clan, people just like you.
And I saw that they were getting good, and I started getting competitive because I wanted that level of attention. I wanted to be seen again. And since I was still at a rough stage of my life, I wish it was more wholesome and more happy, but I was still going through grief. So I wanted to fight. I felt like I needed to prove myself in other ways as well. So I got into a couple fights at that school, was just going through my rebellious stage.
Of course.
And after my father grounded me for lying about grades, lying about wanting to fight people, and then getting in fights with people and getting suspended. And he's just trying to survive, man. My dad was going through so much. His dad passed away. His wife passed away. He has to help out his family, transitioning to a new place, and his kids being rebellious. By the time I knew it, I was grounded. And all I had was these moves that I last saw on YouTube before I had no access to any media. And I just kept practicing. And then by the time that my dad felt it was appropriate that I can go back to the breakdance club or I can go back to something, then I came back with more gains, with more moves, with more stuff. And there was nothing more empowering than that, because I realized that all of the progress that I made and these new battles or call out battles I'd engage in, it wasn't because there was a coach telling me, it wasn't because there was an adult telling me when to go to rehearsal or when to go to practice. I already felt so misunderstood because there's no rehearsals for breaking. There's no performance for breaking. It's more like you just go off. The break of the song hits you and you go off and you do your best to battle and pretty much assert dominance through dance fighting to the other person across. And the more moves that I learned, the more I disciplined myself, then the more satisfying it got. So it was around 7th grade, 12 years old, when I realized, I need to figure out how to build my blueprint for this thing. I already acknowledged that it was a very undeveloped circuit of competition that exists. There was still a lot of jams, a lot of competitions that really did, but something to build a career out of. It was still really early in the game, but some people were doing it. So I needed to figure out how.
So, and just to kind of go back a little bit. So just even how you jumped into it, it was a confidence builder. It was therapeutic for you, helped you deal through some grief. And then obviously you talked about your dad grounding you and you just got in the lab and got even better than what you were before. At what point did it become more than a hobby? Like, at what point did you say, like, did you come to the realization, like, okay, this isn't just something that I'm doing for fun and something that serves me. I can actually compete and make money, or, I can do something with this. At what point do you think that was?
I think it was the moment I realized I had the privilege of YouTube, and early YouTube. Breaking YouTube. And breaking had already gone through a couple evolutions on how media was shared. Because if it started in the 1970s, South Bronx, New York, the only way that breaking or jams was being distributed, it was going from being in the Bronx to house parties to jams, all the way to getting its live experience and then making its way to media like movies, TV, and then eventually more jams, more authentic jams or organic jams started to be produced, right? People were documenting these ciphers referring to the dance circles, the exchanges between other dancers going in and doing their thing, showing their style, essentially. Everyone kind of has the same framework in terms of how the movement actually works, but it's up to you to show your most original interpretation of it. That's still somewhat cohesive and you can see the narrative, but it's being as original as possible and being as unique as you possibly can. But going from that period of time to the VHS era, to the DVD era of breaking, to the YouTube generation of breaking, I found myself in that time. So people were already producing more instructional videos. There were competitions that were being shared. There were things like Red Bull. There was a competition produced by Red Bull called Lords of the Floor in about 2000, 2001. And since I started in 2008, Red Bull already had another rendition called BC1, and that's pretty much the most prestigious one-on-one competition that is held around the world. And that also was happening at the same time as a lot of other breaking ecosystems, whether that was in the Netherlands or that was in other parts of Europe, all the way to Asia, Japan, Korea. So there was already an ecosystem of breaking competitions that existed. And I had the privilege of seeing all of that as a 12-year-old alone, needing some purpose. So I quickly saw that there was some pathway. It may not be entirely carved out, but it looks like if I'm going to be one of the best breakers in the world, or if I want to compete at this level, I have to find my local scene. I have to find the scene at a state level. I need to find the scene at a national level. I need to figure out how to conquer the world. And yeah, it was that moment where I realized I don't think there's a direct blueprint, but I think this is some path, and I need to figure out how to carve it out.
So did you YouTube was how you were ultimately able to get the exposure, and they reached out and invited you to some of these events, or did you have to do local events in order to qualify? Like, how does that work?
It's a mix of both. It's a mix of both. Yeah, when it comes to being a professional b-boy or a professional breaker, you kind of just like check the box. You just kind of show up there, you check the box, and if you do better than the other pro b-boy, then it's like, okay, I guess you're a pro.
So I couldn't just show up to a competition. They're like, who's this guy? I could just show up. And just
in most
break.
cases, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty informal in those kind of ways, but you can see that a lot of these competitive circuits are playing around with age brackets. Some people are playing with yearly experience brackets, but it's not like there's any white belts, yellow belts, or any kind of categorization like that for most circuits. It really is kind of just kind of show up. You either pay the admission fee if there is one, and you just play the game. So
how does go ahead?
Can you remind me of the last question? Sorry.
Oh, well, no, I mean, I'd asked, how you were able to qualify for some of these, but I did want to ask you this. This is the major question. How do these competitions work? Like, is there a point system? How does it go? Who's the winner? Do we go off a crowd? Like, break that down to me.
Yeah. There is a criteria, like a universal criteria when it comes to breaking. Essentially, you have one breaker and you have another breaker. You can do this and apply this towards a 1-on-1, a 2-on-2, a 3-on-3, all the way to a 10-on-10 crew battle. And there's a narrative that plays out, but everyone's pretty much working with the same framework. So at each of these battles, judged battles, you have your DJ, and that's the backbone of the jam or the backbone of the entire competition.
Naturally.
They play whatever they want, and typically you'd expect them to play breaks. And that ranges from all hip-hop music from 80s, 90s, today, but solely focused on the break. So Latin, African roots, drum breaks, a lot of samples from James Brown and his band and Bernard Purdie, one of the most sampled drummers of all humankind, looping over and over and over again. So the DJ is playing whatever he wants, and you have a certain amount of judges, 3 to 5, maybe 2 or 1, but most of the time you'll see 3 judges at local events. Those judges are usually determined or selected based on reputation, what they have contributed to the scene, their competitive experience in the scene, and they're going to determine between 2 breakers or 2 crews who's going to either advance to the next battle or who's going to ultimately win, right? And the framework that they're judging on is there's a foundation in breaking. There's about 4 to 5 parts of it. There's what's called your top rock. And that's where you see people dancing on top, standing on their feet. Almost looks like they're getting ready to get down, right? It's that part. There's a lot of house party steps that you can find in there. There's a lot of unique, like breaking's very own steps in there. There's studio steps. There's a lot of stuff that you can kind of pick away from like Michael Jackson or James Brown moves. Just maybe with a modification on posture or just the way it looks. And then there's a second portion, which is Some people call it your down rock. Some people call it footwork or floor work. So that's the part where you have 1 to 2 hands on the ground and your feet maneuver in different directions. And debatable, there's a third category that's called power moves. And that's the stuff that you see on TV, the flashy stuff, the head spins, the flares, the windmills, the back spins. So you can kind of see a whole narrative that's going on, right? You have dancing on top, the floor work on the bottom. That's probably the most original piece to what makes breaking is footwork. How we maneuver around our hands with our feet. And then there's power moves, the flashy stuff. And then lastly, you have your freezes. A freeze can be either something that makes that period or that exclamation point to that round. It can either be one of these, or even standing on your head or standing on one hand. But it has to be apparent that I'm making sure that I'm making a point, and this is the end of my round, or I'm going to hit this with the music, and it completes the story. And usually these rounds, they run about like 30 to 45 seconds. And in recent days, a lot of kids and new generation breakers are pushing the limits to like 1 minute rounds. So if I were to equate that to what an athlete typically does today, that's like technical sprinting for about 45 seconds to a minute.
That's crazy.
And then you get about 30 to 45 seconds of rest. And then again, you get another 45 seconds to a minute of technical sprinting, but you can't repeat those moves.
Oh, so is it how many rounds? 3 or 4 rounds?
Typically. Sometimes if it's a quick event, it's just 1 round per person. So I go and then you go, and then the judges decide. MC says, all right, judges, who are we going to pick to move on to top 4? Is it going to be Kenneth or is it going to be Nico? Judges on 3. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Kenneth, you move on to top 4. And then you battle into top 4. You battle someone from Switzerland. And they're like, all right, Kenneth, you're going to battle B-boy so-and-so from Switzerland. 2 rounds per person. So you go throw out your first best round of your life. And then you got to throw out your second round, best of your life, but you can't repeat any of those moves. And you can't repeat anything that you did from the battle before. And they have to be original. And you got to make sure that your foot doesn't scrape. You got to make sure that you're with the music. You got to make sure that you're showing your originality. And you got to make sure that you're facing him. You're spinning on your head for how long, and you stand up. You can't face the wall. You got to face him. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So and you got to do it over and over again.
So let me ask you this. You mentioned the DJ playing whatever he wants to play. And this is a question. The DJ's playing whatever and you don't even know what he's going to play. You have to be able to adjust to that.
Absolutely. That's the exciting part about it. So when people kill the beat, if they can read the cadence of the song, if they can feel it, there's something really cool about seeing the partnership of seeing a dancer apply their foundational understanding of music to whatever DJ's playing and being like, okay, I'm vibing with you. Sometimes DJ will play something and dancer's like, dude, I don't know. But it's not like the dancer has a choice. You got to roll with it. But yeah, that's usually the case. That's one of the most exciting parts about breaking.
Now, does it get to the point with some of these? Because I'm assuming you being in the industry for a while that you've seen all these DJs. Let's say you're going to said competition, you're going to Red Bull One or whatever, and they say, okay, DJ Extreme is going to be there, but you've heard his stuff before. You know what type of sets he plays. Are you going to listen ahead of time? Like, okay, he's probably going to throw some of this in there. Is that how it goes?
That's probably the responsible thing to do. Yeah.
But you guys don't. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You don't have to, but it's as a competitor and you want to get that extra edge over everyone else, then any research is good research. So,
wow.
Yeah. Be prepared or be prepared to fail.
So that is how the competition is structured. So you mentioned, facing all these people in all these different countries. You mentioned Japan. You mentioned somebody from Switzerland. So this is something I've heard, because obviously preparing for this interview, we talk about preparation. I did my research and I've heard people, like I've been on Reddit and I've heard some people say, oh man, the B-boy scene is dead. Like it's just not how it used to be. What would be your response what would be your response to that as a person that's actively in the industry?
I feel like breaking is going through, as it always has been, it's consistently evolving. And the experience that I had in 2008, when I finally entered the scene after being sheltered in my little YouTube hole, and then finally making it to the San Diego community, and then making it to the LA scene, making it to the NorCal scene, and then making my way across the country to worldwide. I think my upbringing and my experience then is entirely different from now. I think breaking is it's at its most exposed point ever, which is amazing because the amount of resources, the amount of resources that exist when I thought I had a ton of resources, are abundant. If you need a breaking instructor in North County, San Diego, you can find one. If you need a breaking coach in random part of Texas, you can definitely find one. There's great academies, there's community centers for breaking, versus like, hey, I want to break after school, but looks like janitor doesn't really understand what breaking is. So he was like, looks like you're up to no good, get out of here. And I'm like, this was the one good thing in my life. So I'm going to get kicked out for it. And seeing that kids or the next generation of breakers, where I would typically, in my experience, get kicked out or looked weird at or have received weird looks from different communities. It's like people can be gold medalists now at the 2024 Paris Olympics for breaking.
I was going to ask you about that too. So yeah, please tell me. I want to know how you feel about that.
Yeah. So I think breaking is alive in a really amazing way. I do feel a certain way when people say that breaking is dead. I do feel like that same experience that I had when it was when it was just 16 years ago. Like breaking's been around for 50 years, but my experience only extends to 16. When I first started, there was a lot of criticism around not being original. It kind of reminds me of the early stages of skateboarding, right? You're either a really dope skateboarder or you're a poser. And that was kind of the same case with breaking when I first started. If you're not good, or if you're halfway about it, then you're just a poser. And it's like, what's the point of doing it? You have to be fresh. And if you're going to be fresh, you have to be original. We're all kind of taking from the same framework of top rock, your down rock, and we have our power moves and our freezes. But if you're not making it look like Kenneth, if I'm not making it look like Nico, and if there's a silhouette in front of us, and I can tell that that's you, and you can tell that that's me, mission accomplished. But if I look like one bit like Kenneth, then I'm a biter.
You have to be able to put your stamp on it, right?
Yeah. Then I'm a biter, I'm a copycat, and I'm not authentically breaking. But since breaking is at its most exposed and most like highest growth rate right now in terms of awareness, everyone looks like everyone. You would be able to tell really easily 10 years ago and further what an East Coast breaker looks like versus a West Coast breaker looks like.
Completely different.
Yeah. Asian breakers versus American breakers, European breakers versus, like Latin American breakers. And everyone, there's a huge wave in my experience and what I see right now that it's really looking the same. There's plenty of people that are still carving away at their most original style ever. And it's not like they're gone and it's like a lost art. But I think what is at the forefront of breaking right now, there's a lot that looks the same, but this is the greatest opportunity of positivity positive momentum around something that has meant so much to me and has meant so much to other people. But I don't think it's dead. I do feel like originality, something that was valued, is not prioritized as much, but it's pretty awesome that breaking's at the forefront at all. Yeah.
So how do you? So how do you mentioned originality? How do you continue to maintain original now that it's more aware and people can go on YouTube or IG or social media? They can look at Nico's moves or they can look at this guy's moves. How do you continue to throw new stuff in the mix? Like, what does that process look like for you?
Yeah, I think in order for me or anyone to continue evolving our approach or our interpretation of breaking to continue being as original and unique as possible, now 16 years in, I think it really takes expanding our human experiences I don't want to sound woo woo, but I think it really does. Yeah. Whether that's involving yourself in martial arts, involving yourself in other dance styles, involving yourself in other sports, other practices, even lifestyles like entrepreneurship and breaking and everything that's not breaking. I think that is what can make you a more unique breaker. And just in my 3 years of entrepreneurship, being able to build a coffee shop, a cigar lounge, a random e-cigarette chain with multiple locations, all the way to like a plant boutique and making pastries. I feel like the conditioning that I've had to go through with human resources and HR and legal and marketing and making all those things happen and still balancing a life of friends, family, social life, and breaking and still staying at the level of breaking I want to stay at. I think expanding our human experiences and doing everything that's not related to breaking can continue to, that can continue to help out with making you more original. Yeah, so, in my experience as an entrepreneur, I don't think I would have been able to be where I'm at in breaking and continue to have my personal interpretation if it wasn't for business, if it wasn't for just allowing myself to naturally grow. I think before I opened the businesses 3 years ago, I was just b-boy full-time, training 6 to 8 hours per day, of course with breaks, but pretty much is my full-time job, teaching, coaching, competing, traveling. I was fully immersed in the breaking world, and I did feel that at some point my style or my growth began to plateau the more that I only focused on breaking.
That makes sense.
But the moment that I stepped away from breaking in these 16 years to focus on other parts of life, like business, family, more creative projects like music and DJing, hopping back into the cypher, hopping back into the lab of breaking, I now have all these other new influences, right? If I'm battling someone and I've only been focusing on breaking, I did find myself easily emotionally triggered in a battle. If someone doesn't move or they trash talk to me, it would sting. But now being like a leader in a corporation, it's like I have all walks of life, or like I have all walks of life that I have to maneuver through. I have all these issues that I need to resolve, and I'm constantly putting out fires that require emotional regulation. So now, just that little piece, hopping back into the cypher, if someone's dance fighting against me and they're trash talking, it's like, it means nothing. Like, there's lawsuits to deal with, there's HR, there's compliance that I got to deal with.
You're mentally tough now.
Yeah, exactly. And I wouldn't have been able to be at that place if it wasn't for business. As for music, if I didn't get into DJing, if I didn't get into music production, my ability to understand the backbone and understand deeper experiences in the music as a dancer, it wouldn't have been there if I didn't practice the instruments itself. And I think you can see where that comes from. Even when it comes to like the family portion, right? If I have all these new family members and friends, whether it's from the business, people like you, or these connections through like my lineage as a Filipino American, going back to the Philippines and carrying that back to the cypher, I have Filipino experience. I have an American experience that I can contribute to how I build upon this. That's motivating these moves. That's motivating all these different maneuvers. So I do really think it's important to go outside of breaking to improve the originality of breaking.
So this is my you can tell me if I'm correct with this. I just envision you, I don't know, maybe you're working at the coffee shop and you're making pastries or you're making coffee and you might do some type of weird movement. You're like, oh, okay, I can throw that into my is that how it goes? Yeah,
pretty much. At its simplest form. All those happy accidents, those make signature moves that can make an entire stadium of people go wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I think it's those human experiences
that add inspiration. You know, that makes sense because I have a few friends that are obviously you're a musician as well and you're a DJ as well. I have a few friends that are in that industry, and you know, we could just be having a regular conversation and then a word or maybe a car passes by or something. I'm like, oh, okay, I can use it. It's just I can see the artist, how you can get inspired by just the smallest thing. So that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
that's
so
the most exciting part about breaking is
go ahead.
that you can really go off the rails with implementing random stuff into your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why philosophers like Bruce Lee are so influential, not just to breaking, but to everything.
Right. Life.
Yeah. Just be like water. Put water in a cup, it becomes the cup.
So, last question, because I know I know you have to get back to entrepreneurship and family. How can the fans reach and support you? And then also, if you can, tell us what's coming up next. What tournaments or what tell us what's on the agenda.
Yeah. Ways that you can support is just by heading over to Nico Spins. You'll probably see the affiliated pages, whether that's the hybrid shop, coffee shop, cafe, pastry, bakery, cigar lounge, beer and wine bar. That's
great.
Available here in Hillcrest in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
Open every single day. And just checking out all the networking and checking out all the network content that I got going on, like here with Kenneth today.
Mm-hmm.
I got over 20 plus hours of DJ mixes if you want to find those.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much post everything. So just visiting any of those and giving me your valued attention, that means the world. And places that I'm heading to, I'm about to have my first baby. I'm going to be a baby girl. So I'm going to go underground for the competitive circuit for a little bit. Mm-hmm. But that means creative time, human experiences. I'm going to get new stuff, a lot of new stuff and new stories to tell. So I'm just going to live the human experience for now.
Well, you know what? I don't know what it is, man. When guys become fathers, man, they just evolve to another level mentally and physically. It's almost like they're stronger too. So I don't know. You're gonna get Nico the dad.
Yeah.
on the circuit. So okay, we mentioned the Olympics.
Yeah. We can talk about that.
Is that a thing for you, or obviously going underground? I just have to ask.
Yeah. I exercised as much as I could on that topic.
Yeah.
Beginning of 2020, end of 2022, I made the decision I was gonna go as hard as I can on what resources were available, whether that's joining Team USA or Team Philippines.
Right.
I felt really inclined to go for Team Philippines because it's such a heritage driven opportunity. So I exercised that as far as I could, ran into some citizenship stuff and didn't really pan out. I was a prospect to the team, like conditionally on Team Philippines, but that's okay. It didn't work out. And then I went to a Team USA, like breaking for gold qualifier. Mm-hmm. I went to a couple of them here in the States, and I didn't pass the first round, but that's cool.
Yeah,
I'm still competing, whether Olympics or not. I am a b-boy for life.
Most definitely. So any social media handles, websites, anybody that the fans can follow?
Yeah, just Nico Spins all the way. You'll find me there.
Nico Spins all the way. Well, no, man, most definitely. I appreciate you taking some time. Like I said, I know obviously it's been crazy. We've both been busy, but once again, as soon as I got the opportunity to really dive in and research some of your career, I watched a few of your videos on YouTube. I was like, man, I have to get this guy on the podcast, really just to tell his story. And honestly, I feel like if I didn't cut this short, we probably could have went for another 2 hours. But I said, no one's going to sit here for 2 freaking hours. And this guy has a business to run.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for thinking of me in the first place, man. I appreciate it.
No, yeah, and thanks for blessing us and talking to us about your story. And fans, there are people, everybody's going through. Everyone goes through life. Everybody has their own challenges and stuff like that. But I hope you guys were able to take something from this episode and just see how he's evolved through his journey and used the sport. Not only as therapy, but as a way to help and inspire others.
Cool. Beautiful, man. Beautiful. I wish you all the best, brother.
Most definitely. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Bye.
All right.